At the Labour Party conference in Brighton last autumn, we discussed whether we should campaign in the Europe referendum. Labour Party members who wanted us to leave, and there were quite a few, put their case. In many ways, I could understand and sympathise with their arguments. The European Union is too bureaucratic. We hoped to change it so that elected MEPs would have more power, but we understand why so many Labour supporters wanted all our laws and regulations to be the responsibility of Britain alone and not to be interfered with by Brussels. We will just have to hope that the Conservative government will not now use leaving the EU as an excuse to water down our legal rights. It is true that the EU's trade with the rest of the world is not as free and fair as it could be. But we don't agree with the free trade leave lobby that all regulations, all tariffs and all minimum standards should be swept away. We believe that working people have benefited from the minimum wage, health and safety at work, guaranteed holidays and maternity leave and limited working hours. We think there is a very real danger that the Conservative government will now water down or ditch all those things. We hope we are wrong, but if this does happen, we trust working people to place the blame where it is deserved, on Johnson and Gove and Farage and all those Leave campaigners who claimed that your working conditions would be safe. The EU has been too much in the pockets of the big financial institutions and multinational corporations. But we wanted to be sure that our young people could find properly paid work. And if there is now a massive rise in unemployment, you will know who to blame. Austerity is a failed policy which is still holding all European countries back, including our own. We wanted to see homes and schools and hospitals and railways and renewable power stations and flood defences built in the UK and in the rest of Europe as well, so that we can all prosper, we can get people back to work throughout the continent. What we need now is a change of government here in Britain. We don't believe the Conservatives are any more likely to ditch their failed austerity programme now that we've left the EU than they would have done if we had stayed. Only a Labour government and Labour councils will do that. And there is a real problem with immigration. Bad employers have been using cheap labour from abroad to undercut normal wage rates here. If we had stayed in the EU, Labour would have worked with other European countries to prohibit the recruitment of workers by agencies in Eastern Europe in order to fulfil contracts in this country rather than employing the local population. We now need to shame the Conservative government into enforcing the minimum wage properly, paying people for their travel time, preventing gangmasters using tied accommodation and transport as ways of fleecing the people who are working for them, and put more effort into prosecuting those agencies who are intimidating their workers. We don't believe that the Conservatives and UKIP businessmen, many of whom have profited from cheap migrant labour, are going to do what they say about immigration. But we will see. The Labour Party was started by ordinary working people in Britain through their trade unions, coming together to make sure that they would be properly paid for their work, that they would get the healthcare and the education and the houses that they need, that the wealth of the nation would no longer be siphoned off to feed the greed of the very, very rich. That is still the whole purpose of the Labour Party. Whether we are working in Westminster or at Suffolk County Council, elected Labour councillors and MPs are focused on making Britain and the world fairer and healthier and more secure. None of the people we exist to work for will see any difference in our resolve. Whether you voted Leave or Remain, we know you wanted to vote for a better life for yourselves and your children, and we will continue to fight alongside you to achieve that. The people of Britain have decided that we should leave the European Union. We believe that over the next 4 years there is a very real danger that unemployment will rise, that our public services will be privatised, and that the British people will become worse off. That does not mean for one moment that we will give up our resolve to change Britain into a country where we can all contribute and all receive a fair deal and equal respect. In 4 years' time, we need to change our government. And the first thing that needs to change is to get rid of this miserly, penny-pinching, unfair, undemocratic, unsafe Conservative County Council, which is putting all our lives at risk.